Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. Priorities. That's what we're talking about today. Priorities are so important in life. We set priorities for many different things, even work and play. But the most important priority that you're probably not paying attention to is prioritizing yourself. Have you thought about that? It's super key. And it can be very impactful in how you show up for work, your life, your personal relationships. She is a leadership life coach and owner of Priority, your LLC. Let's see, priorities. She's,
Priority.
yes. And she's back with us. Vanette Hill is on the show. Welcome. How are you?
I'm fantastic, Steve. Thank you so much for having me.
It's great to have you back here, Vanette. Always learn so much insight. And I just want to go right there. We're all on a journey, we believe. How about your journey with this whole thing in terms of learning to prioritize yourself? Was that a challenge, being true to yourself?
Absolutely. And a lot of people, it's a challenge, not just for me, but what I've found throughout the years through conversations with folks is that a lot of people have this challenge, Steve. Because and I found as women particularly and people in general, but sometimes life gets in the way. So you may have a plan when you're young, right? You're getting ready to graduate high school, you're thinking about college and whatnot, and then life can happen. And for me, that was I had my first child at 20. So shifting away from thinking I was going away to college to now my focus is on my child. And as people have children and then you nurture the kids, you're trying to think, okay, how do I provide for my family? And this goes to moms and dads when you're working, you're like, okay, how can I provide for my family? So it shifts from what is it that I want to do in this world? What's my purpose? And then the focus is really on in survival mode. How do I provide a life for my family? So for me, I have 3 children at the time. I want to say I was going to school and pursuing my degree or whatnot, had a child. Then I had to shift, start working, and got married, had 2 more, got divorced. In the midst of all that, right? It's like, okay, now I need to strategize because again, the focus has been on the kids, but then I had to think, okay, I need to finish my degree. So what I did was I worked full time and at nighttime I went to school full time. And then I would work with the kids with their stuff. And at some point I started getting burnt out. And that's what happens. You show up at work. I was showing at work. I was performing at work. You have a lot of people out there who are high performers, but they're burning out and they're breaking down on the personal side of leadership. So I could always perform at work, but after I got through with the kids, I was burnt out. And then you start feeling unfulfilled. And that's what happened to me, Steve, in my journey. The kids started getting older. When they're older and they're more self-sufficient, then you have a little bit more time to kind of start thinking because you're not so focused on them. But now you're thinking, okay, I have some time on my hands. And I was thinking, like, what do I really want to do? What brings me joy? What makes me happy? I was in a funk. And so I started doing things that made me happy. Like I enjoy coaching, mentoring, training folks. So I would randomly at my day job create a class about something and invite colleagues to the class, purchase books. And I'm always big on developing self and developing people. And then it got to the point where I was like, okay, I need to start taking care of myself. So it hit I hit a crossroads where I just really was like, okay, Vanette, you have to take care of self and you have to find time to prioritize you. And so I started going down that path and I got a coach and I was mentored. And I realized that we have like a third of our life is spent in the office working. And there may be, of the 2/3 that's left, we're spending a portion of that time sleeping, a portion of time with family. And I'm like, well, how much of the time in the day am I spending doing something that matters most just for me? And I realized I was not taking care of myself. I ended up with high blood pressure. I ended up really falling into what I would say is a funk. You know, it was low level depression, but it was still depression because I wasn't aligning and prioritizing myself and my needs. And when you ignore your needs, you put yourself in a deficit. So I was in a deficit around my mental well-being, around what it is I wanted to do instead of what I felt other people expected from me. And once I start saying, you know, hold up, these are some things that's important to me. It's important that, you know, I find a way to do things that bring me joy. I love music. I love dancing. I love concerts. I had to find a way to do that. I love artsy stuff. I had to find a way to do that. I had to find time to meditate, practicing self-care. And once I started really meditating and slowing down, because sometimes we feel like we have to do all the things all the time, I began to slow down. And I got so much clarity. I began to meditate. And when you get clarity, that's when all the things you forgot that you really enjoy doing in life comes up. And you're like, I do like that. Or I do like, you know, doing this. And then I started opening myself up for new experiences and I started traveling by myself. And that was just, oh, that was phenomenal. It was truly eye-opening.
Thank you for sharing that. And it's interesting what you do. You're the one that gives people advice to do that, but you didn't take your own advice. And you said two words that were very, very impactful: self-care. And that's kind of what we're talking about, the priority, putting the priority on you, self-care. You said you traveled alone?
Yes, yes. I love traveling, traveling by myself. I try to take a trip every year by
Wow.
myself. I've been to Florida, Barbados, St. Thomas, Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic. So all these places, and most of them are, you know, Caribbean in nature, but or near the ocean. When you have time to be with yourself on your own schedule, you get to discover a whole new side of you. You really get to experience and appreciate who you are as a person, and that's what I set out to do, and that's what I've been doing.
Love it. And that's on my bucket list. I've never done it before. And all those locations I've been to, and we'll go back in a second by myself. And this is what I learned. And I'm just going to share it because it's in line with what you're saying. I always do things with other people. It's just the way I am.
Mhm.
And it's almost, I don't even want to admit this, but it was maybe a year and change ago. I was working late and I was like, I got to eat. Well, I guess I'm going to go to the restaurant and eat by myself. That's kind of weird. I've never done that before. People are going to be looking at me. And there was that guy at the bar by himself. I was like, it was Applebee's. Just went up the street. Let me tell you, that was the best $20 meal I ever had and the most flavorful craft beer I've ever had. Why? Because I focused on it and me. Because when you're with somebody else, I don't care who it is. You could love them to death, or it could be just an associate, a friend, or whatever it is. You're talking, taking attention away from you and the meal or whatever you're doing. And I could tell you where I was sitting at the bar at that night. I really could, because I'll never forget it. It was like, yeah, and there's other people doing the same exact thing. And I could have reached out and I could have said, "Hey man, how you doing? But what game are you guys watching?" I was just in my zone. I didn't want to talk to anybody. But that was my wake up. And I'm just sharing that for others that don't prioritize. And I still need to. I'm better, but not where I need to be. Why is it also women have more of a challenge doing this?
I think it's because it's in our nature to nurture others. So we've been groomed in our cultures, various cultures, in our communities and society as a whole, right? You take care of others, then whatever is left, if it's anything left, then you give that to yourself. And then we're been taught that if you take care of yourself, you're being selfish.
Yes.
And that's not true. It's self-fault. You have to take care of you. And that's why when you're on a plane and they say, hey, if we get in trouble, you grab your mask and fix your mask first before you try to help somebody else. And that's how it is in life. You have to fix yourself before you can go and be of service, real service to other people. So that's why I think for women, it's almost, and we also carry a guilt attached. It's like we've been conditioned to believe that, you know what, if I care for everybody else, I get extra credit in heaven when I die. And so it doesn't matter if I don't live a fulfilled life and if I don't find my purpose and live as my authentic self, because I've sacrificed myself to help others. That is not how that works.
I could insert a word here that shouldn't be said, but it's true. And as a guy, I did the same exact thing. I I was wrong, and I realized it later in life, but I didn't take that time because I felt got to keep working. What I got to support a family. What about if I don't push hard enough and I lose that job? I'm not going to take all my vacation time so I look more valuable. Duh, dumb. Yeah, and even not even. I'm going to say 2019. I made a commitment to go to the gym. I would go to the gym. I'm there for like 20 minutes on the treadmill, and I'd be saying to myself, I really should go to work. And I would leave. All wrong, but this is how we learn. And, got an ulcer from worrying about things. And this is, yeah, oh, yeah. And still pops up from stress from time to time. So we need to, the self-care thing is not important.
Oh,
Critical. Thank you. Critical.
it's critical because you matter. Like you matter, Steve. You matter. And taking care of you and taking care of ourselves is a priority because we only get one body. I know there's people out there that's sculpting it. I'm not shading any of that, but it's still genuinely the inside is still just your body. You can do things on the outside all you want, but you have to make sure the inside is good. And the inside being not just your organs, but how your soul is. How do you feel about yourself? And so many times we don't even think, like, how do I feel about myself? We don't even give a thought of if somebody say, well, Steve, describe yourself to me. What would you say about yourself?
I got it.
Because a lot of us, when we meet people, people say, well, tell me about yourself. The first thing we go to is what we do for a living, right?
Right. Yep. Exactly right. Because we think that's essentially what makes us who we are. And
that's it.
Not.
And it's not. It's not. When I coach young people, I tell them all the time, you are not your job title. Because they're like, oh, the VP walked in and I was so intimidated. I'm like, you are not your job title. Your job title, you may be an analyst, you may be a clerk, you may be a secretary, but that's not who you are. That's what you do right now. But you have skills, you have capabilities, you have the ability to be so much more. And that's why it's so important when you talk about prioritizing you. It talks about, you really need to give yourself positive self-talk. So many times we're critical on ourselves, Steve. I know I do it all the time, where it's like, if I mess up on something, fall short, I'm beating myself over the head about it. Instead of what we need to do is give ourselves the same grace we give everybody else. So you know what? Okay, I missed the mark, but what did I learn?
There's a lesson in everything.
There's a lesson in everything. Absolutely.
I want to jump in here when you talk about the title and we think that's who we are. Even if it's on the door of your office or the little thing that you put on your desk, what comes first? Your name. They never put the title first, then your name. It's never Director.
Absolutely.
Vanette Hill. It's always Vanette Hill, Director of Operations. Why? Because you matter. You are more important than the title.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's why prioritizing you is so important. That's why I do what I do, because you can have people that's showing up every day at work that are stars at work. But behind that mask that they show up with, they're carrying a lot that they need to sort through. There's a lot going on in society. We have all these children getting killed in these mass shootings. This is craziness. That's a lot for parents. When you have children, when you go off to work and you send your kids to school nowadays, there's a certain level of anxiety with, oh my gosh, is, what the school shootings that's going on, sending your kids off to college, the situations that go on, the shooting that happened around the colleges and in movie theaters. So there's anxiety in today's society that we deal with. When we're watching the news and we're seeing different social injustices, and even the threat of war that peaks up in other nations, and even amongst the United States, it's like there's a lot that adults are being bombarded with.
Yeah.
It's so you have to find time to get balance for you.
And even though we say, well, I don't pay attention to the news, I don't worry about any of that, it's still in your face. And it's still pictured you are the perfect sculpture. You're perfect. And when you get bombarded with a piece of information of negativity, whatever it is, it's like the chisel came out and then a little piece fell off. A tiny little piece. Something is always chipping away at you, and you have to protect yourself from that. Vanette, can you give us an example of a client maybe that struggled finding the right way to prioritize themselves and then did?
Yes, so I had a client that I work with, and um, early on in her life, she had been the caregiver of her siblings because her mom had passed. And so she had to move back home, and she raised her siblings, and then she had children. And so she focused on her children. And she always found a way to put other people's needs before herself. And so I have this program called The Journey to You. And so she went through the Journey to You coaching program where we really helped her identify her values, what she really wanted in life, what mattered most to her. And you had to strip away the family from that and just find out specifically what matters most to you. We got to that. We had to ask some tough questions around, they would have job postings at work. She wouldn't apply for it, or she would say, well, I saw a younger person come and I just let her get it. And I was like, why wouldn't you go for it? What made you feel? And she didn't feel she was deserving. Ultimately, she didn't feel she was deserving. So we started doing affirmations. Part of building the self-care, so part of rebuilding your confidence in yourself is, having her create 4 to 5 affirmations that she said daily, and then having her create a vision board, and then having her put down, what do you want your life to be? She wrote a letter. I had to write a letter to herself to say, write out right now where you are right now in your life. How do you feel about yourself right now? And just sit and think with that. And then the second half of that activity, about a week later, was now write a letter to yourself describing the life that you absolutely want. No holds bar, like no holds bar. Whatever you want. Be very specific and being able to visualize that.
I can't wait to do that, and I'll be doing that later. I'm not even kidding. I never thought of it in those terms. And basically, if you believe in manifestation, that's
Absolutely.
that's what you're doing. Just as I always hear, uh, be very specific about what you want. Go into detail, extreme detail. I'm going to just pivot for just a moment. I just learned recently, thinking, I got something I manifested. I did. 80% of it was exactly what I was looking for. And 20% of it, not so much. And the 20% is a little problematic, but that you take good with the bad. If I properly manifested, it would have been 100%. But I didn't go into detail and I didn't write it down. It was just in
Mhm.
my mind, but it was very clear of what I want, and this showed up. But the 20%, if I did it right, so I'm just sharing that. You know, if you're gonna write that letter to yourself of the perfect world and everything, go into detail. Take some time. Don't just jump to the
Absolutely.
paragraph. A little bit more than that. Okay. How to share
Absolutely. And
realization.
no, but I'm so glad you said that though, Steve, because that is the key to having the life that you want is you have to believe you can have it and you have to be able to see it. So when you can see it in your mind, you see a picture of it and then you write it down, you're reinforcing it. And then you read it and then you think about it. And then you're going to start manifesting and start attracting.
Hmm.
You're going to be in alignment and start attracting on a vibration of the thing that you want. So your steps are going to be everything you do is going to start aligning to the vision that you see for yourself. That's why it's so important. So when you say you actually thought it, you saw it, you could see it, it wasn't, but you said if you had that extra 20%, you know that it would have been, the whole thing. But look at the power of what you did with the 80%.
100%. There's no doubt about it. This stuff really does. It really does work. And I've even to the point where I believe it's already here. I'll do that sometimes. And sometimes when you're having not the greatest day and you start thinking of these things that you want, whatever it might be, I get a little
Absolutely.
I get a little excited because I know it's showing up. I know it is. And I know
That's it.
maybe that sounds a little crazy, but it's just, just be patient, but it will show up. But it's coming on its own time. It's not on your timeline. It's on universe time, whatever that is.
But that's so true. That is so true because I've listened to a lot of different podcasts. I've heard a lot of successful people say it, and they all say that you have to believe you already have the thing it is that you want, and you have to be able to see it. When you see it and you have that level of belief, it will manifest itself. So that's why self-care is so important because if you weren't in tune with yourself, you couldn't even be aligned to your belief
Yes.
to see it, right? But when you start prioritizing yourself, now you can prioritize your thoughts. Now you can think about, well, what is it that I really want? Not what society says I want, not what my parent, my wife, my kids, anybody else think I want. What is it I want? And can I see myself having it? When you see it, you believe it, you'll receive it because you'll start attracting it. But you must believe it's something you already have.
And you said, Vanette, something when we first started that was, I think, key to all of this. And that is the prioritizing, i.e., self-care. The clarity you get from that will enable you to have the clarity to manifest what you really want and feel better about it as opposed to just kind of running on empty all the time. It's like, I got this, so that's coming. I got this. All the pieces fall into place when you
They fall into place. And when you prioritize yourself, you show up in the world as a much complete, fulfilled individual. Because when you take care of you, for those who are looking for mates, you're going to find a partner now, not to put you together, but that can complement you. Because hurt people attract hurt people in most instances,
this is
right?
and let's put it out there right now. How many times have you heard somebody say, I don't know what it is. I keep attracting I keep finding these people that are just broken or whatever. They got issues. I don't know what's going.
It always starts with self. Like you have to look at what you're attracting, right? And it's what you believe, what you say, what you put out there, how you show up. So by prioritizing self and self-care, you have healthier relationships, not just with partners, with friends, family members, children. And if you're a leader, you're a much better leader because when you practice self-care and you practice prioritizing yourself, you're more empathetic to others. And now you can coach others and use that emotional intelligence to help them work through some things.
Absolutely.
So by practicing self-care and prioritizing you, you're able to lead as your most authentic self, not just at work, but in life. And that's what's key.
So one of the final questions for you, and I'm curious, do you believe in energy? Do you believe that we're all energy, that we send out energy, we receive energy?
I believe that we do send out energy. I believe in positivity. I believe God is in all of us, but I think you have to really tap into what's positive, because we have the will to focus on negative. And it's like in our nature, almost when bad things happen to people, like, did you hear? Did you hear? We spread bad news all over really, really quickly. But when something good happens, we don't give it enough of our energy, right? But when you pour your energy, whatever you focus on is going to turn the dial on how your energy is. So if you're focused on negativity, your energy is going to be negative. You're going to attract negative. If you're focused on positive, turn it knob to positive, you're going to be attracting positive.
Yep.
Because negative people can't hang around positive people. They just can't. It's like oil and water. They will separate.
It's so true. And an example, when we talk about, let's say, finding the perfect partner, and I have these conversations with friends all the time, even on a dating app or website, the people that you don't want keep showing up. And I've studied this, in my mind and looked at all of this. I truly believe that you are sending those vibes out there, even though you didn't speak with this person, whatever, they keep showing up. And to me, that's a sign, energetically, you're putting that out there and you ask for it. Essentially, you kind of ask for it. Like they say, the old adage, be careful what you ask for, because you're going to get it. So why not ask for the good stuff, the positive stuff, the stuff you really want? Vanette.
And believe it, just like you did.
Yeah.
Believe it.
Yep. And get excited about it, because it is showing up. It is showing up.
Absolutely.
How do we find you, Vanette? If somebody is struggling with prioritizing themselves, even if they're a leader, and they want to up their game in terms of how they lead, how do we find you?
You can find me at priority word U, the number 4, the letter U.com, or you can contact me directly at 833-973-1222.
Always a pleasure. And I really mean that, talking with you. And thank you for being you, in that you make everything so crystal clear. Like a lot of this stuff, if you're not plugged into it or you're just starting your journey, it can get a little deep, but you make it very clear. And we have our marching orders now. Put the focus on you. Prioritize yourself. Thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Steve. It's been a pleasure.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.